which is something that is near and dear to my heart. I started a business, oh my gosh, a zillion years ago, and went to SCORE in Chicago when I was Rental Life. Oh, and they were wonderful. So it's a great organization, and our speakers tonight are amazingly great men who belong to our club. Jim Crawley, Keith Walter.
I was always told that you always start a meeting with a joke. You always come with a joke. Oh. Did you know that? So he's here.
He's a straight man. Yes, I did. It truly is an honor to have this opportunity to speak to all of you, and I'm glad that we have a guest who's interested in the topic. We are going to be talking about SCORE, so if any of you are not interested, this would be the time that you get to leave. How many of you in here have ever owned a business? Wow, that's a much larger percentage than the population as a whole. We're going to start by talking about why SCORE is necessary, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how SCORE operates. Jim is going to provide the color commentary as we go through this. We'll share. So if we can move to the next slide. I always like to begin with kind of the reason that SCORE exists. And people have many different definitions for small business. So I'm just using the one that the government uses because SCORE is a function of an act of Congress, for those of you who don't know it. This is kind of a breakdown of the percentages of some of the major types of businesses. Franchises, for example, get a lot of play, but they represent a very small percentage of the overall small business market. Home businesses are a huge percentage of the overall small business market. When you talk about how many businesses have fewer than 500 people, what percentage of the total marketplace do you think that represents? 80? So if you look to the next slide. Wow. The numbers, if you actually look at them, are quite remarkable. We all know about companies like Amazon or Apple or Google or IBM or GM, but the truth of the matter is that of the almost 6 million businesses in our country, only 19,000 of them are larger than 500 people. And so it's a very small percentage that gets a huge percentage of the press. 90% have 20 or fewer. So from my perspective, why SCORE is important is because almost 1 million businesses a year every year get created. Almost 1 million businesses a year go out of business. And SCORE as an organization has been doing this for over 50 years. And so there's lots of data. And the data says that those individuals who come to SCORE for help have a 30% higher probability of success being in business, being profitable, than those that don't. So when you look at the volume of businesses that fall in this category, and you look at the number that don't make it, then everything we can do to try and improve their odds certainly, I think, is in each one of our interests. The rest of it's just dry data, so we'll move to the next slide. This is statistically, it's interesting. There are good years and bad years for businesses, i.e. those years where the number of new businesses outstrips the number of those that go away. And then if you look at years like 2007, 2008, the reverse is the case. Overall, it stays about the same. Every year, lots of new people want to get into business for an amazing variety of reasons. Between Jim and I, we could share a story about almost every kind of business because as our chapter, we have about 40 volunteers and we serve about 3,000 people a year. And so on any given day, 5 to 10 people come to SCORE for help. So There's very few stories that we haven't heard this time.
I was going to say, one of the things that's on this chart, somebody might say, what's the reason for business failures? Anybody want to guess? Yeah? Well, the leading cause for small business failures is incompetence. It's people who basically shouldn't have probably been in business to begin with. And that's the problem. That's what we have. There are other reasons. There's another number of reasons, and most of them really have to do with management of the business. It's not the idea, it's not what they're doing. It's not because it isn't the right thing to do. It's because they don't know how to manage their money.
We move on to the next slide. So where does SCORE fit in all of this? SCORE was founded in 1964. Prior to that, there was no national organization in order to help small business. There were about 100 different organizations across the country, and they were very loosely connected. There was no oversight or regulation, and so the kind of advice you got was very much a function of who you happen to know or who you happen to talk to. Many of us in this room are old enough to remember a time before internet, before email, before you could Google anything and get an answer. And so SCORE was founded in order to provide advice. And it was originally founded to just do mentoring, i.e. people who had been successful, often in larger organizations, trying to help people who were starting a business. Since then, SCORE has helped, and the numbers vary, somewhere between 9 and 10 million people. If you look at the numbers, what that says is that in the 54 years that SCORE has been around, they've helped on average a business every 3 minutes. So the numbers are large. Today there's more than 10,000 volunteers nationwide. There's about 40 of us locally who do this. The services are simple. It's one-on-one mentoring. It's classes. We do an average of about 18 classes a month throughout the 6 counties that we serve. And it's online help these days. We do a lot of our mentoring via email, via FaceTime, via Skype, because a lot of the communities that we serve are just too far for us to drive and be effective.
I was going to say, one of the things that when we're talking about businesses, we look at is how they get started. And most of it we talk about is the funding. Where is that money going to come from to get your business started? Is it brick and mortar, and what kind of a business is it? And the statistics are the majority of people who start a small business, it's from friends, neighbors, it's their own money, they invest. And there's a fourth one, right? The fools are also willing to invest in them. So that's the issue, is that we don't want to see people use their own money, lose all their money if they're not going to last for 4 years in business.
We move to the next slide. So one of the things that we often struggle with is when new people look to join the chapter, join SCORE, there is a fear. They may have been successful in their own business. They may have been coming out of a large company and had success in one aspect of that. But the idea of any number of people with different ideas coming and asking them questions can be a bit intimidating. And we try to remind people that if you've been successful in business, oftentimes a small business owner just needs a sounding board. They need someone to bounce their ideas off of. That most individuals who start a business have an expertise. It may be cooking, it may be medical, it may be legal, it may be construction. And they will be the expert in that, and we as advisors won't be able to teach them a thing in that particular area. But almost every small business has a whole set of things in common. They need to be able to manage payroll if they have employees. They need to market. They need to collect. They need to be able to operate their business efficiently, meaning deal with things like government regulations and taxes. And anyone who's ever been in business has already solved those problems. And if we can help people avoid those mistakes, then it counts as a success for us. About 60% of the people who come to us never go on and start a business. And that's hard for people who join the organization to accept initially. That not everyone we're going to talk to is ultimately going to be the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. An awful lot of them are going to, through the education we give them, choose never to proceed. And that's a victory, because had they proceeded, they could easily have sunk their life savings into it and really be starting over again. So we try to meet our businesses wherever they are. We try to do it in person whenever possible, because that's the most effective. But we also try to strike the right balance between classroom work and mentoring work. Because while SCORE nationally runs campaigns that talks about our free mentoring, the truth is we don't have enough mentors to actually serve everyone who comes to us. And so we have to triage the people who come to us. And those who are just getting started, we send them to class. We move on.
Go ahead.
Next slide.
Next slide.
I believe in an idea.
I believe in community.
I believe in entrepreneurship.
Small businesses, I believe.
Help weave people and communities together.
I believe in the American dream.
What's even better than dreams is making a dream come true.
SCORE is a nonprofit organization where we provide free business consulting services to people who want to start a business or are already in business.
I believe one person can make a difference.
I am that person.
I am that person.
I am a SCORE mentor.
I am a SCORE volunteer.
What do you believe?
You have a gift to share.
Small business owners need you.
To show them, to give them ideas, to encourage them.
I do what I do because watching other people succeed gives me great joy.
Our client success is our success.
It's like watching your children or grandchildren succeed.
Share your success.
Volunteer your expertise. You've got it. Share it.
Volunteer now at SCORE.org.
Volunteer your expertise.
At SCORE.org.
That's it. I forgot to tell Keith, he probably didn't know that I had a small publishing business, but it folded. I got some other ones I'm sure you'd love to hear. So, well, you know, people can get advice, and they usually get advice when they're, before they come and see us, they'll get advice from their friends, they'll get them from their business associates, they'll get them from wherever. That's limited information that they can really get. They can also go online. There's all kinds of resources. We have a wonderful website with all kinds of workshops and things around it. They get a lot of information about what it is that they're going to go into business and what they're going to do. But really, the mentoring program is the part that is the piece that's usually missing. A mentor, a business mentor, is somebody that they're going to see that has had that business experience that they haven't had, has got the entrepreneurship, they understand entrepreneurship, they may have not had that information before, and they find somebody who's willing, and that's what a mentor does, is willing to want to see them succeed and work with them and really want to see them make it in business. And that may be, like we talked about, it may be telling them that maybe this is not the right thing to do. This is maybe not the right time for them to do it. That may be the best advice that they may receive. So mentoring business is what the mentors do. What we do is when we get those calls and these people ask to see, sometimes they ask for face-to-face, but generally, many times, they have no idea of what they're going to do. They just have this idea of going into business, and they wanted to share it with somebody. At least they've made a step. I cringe, I don't know about you, but I cringe when I drive by a shopping center and I see a new business open, and I wonder, did that individual or that family that is opening that business, did they get advice? You know, and you want to hope that they're going to be there at least for the next 4 years, that they're going to make it. But it's unfortunate, but I would think 80% of those people do not seek advice, and that's a sad thing. So it's wonderful to be able to go to a nonprofit organization that provides all free services like SCORE does, and that's why I joined SCORE.
One of the calls that I think everyone in SCORE eventually gets, that we always dread, is when someone calls and says, "I just signed a lease. Now what do I do?" because it's one of the most expensive long-term mistakes that you can make. And we often joke about how Rotary is a secret. Well, SCORE is also a secret. So many people wake up and decide that they want to get into business, and they Google and they download a business plan, and they're off and running. And when we teach classes, often the thing we have to do is unteach them many of the things that they Googled, because a little bit of knowledge can be a very dangerous thing. And not being able to put it in context, not being able to share with them some of the successes, some of the failures. Jim talks about having a publishing business that didn't do so well.
I had a bakery too. I couldn't make enough dough.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure everyone wanted to hear that. I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone who's acted as a SCORE mentor who doesn't remember far more from their failures than from their successes. Vicki and I certainly have had businesses that have done very well, and we've had businesses that we sold at a loss. And the ones that we sold at a loss, we took far greater lessons from. And if we can help someone avoid those mistakes, then they're going to be contributing to the community, and they're not going to have kind of, in many cases, the lifelong losses that they're going to have to then figure out how to cover. Now, I mentioned earlier that we get more people than we can help. And so one of the things that we've become much better at over the last several years is partnering. SCORE is associated with the SBA. Our home office is actually in Citrus Heights with the SBA. Yeah, the guy quietly in the corner I bumped into once or twice when I've been over there. We also work with a number of other organizations that are partnered with the SBA. There is an organization called California Capital, which I suspect many of you in this room have never heard of. California Capital is in the business of finding money for small businesses, minorities, special interest groups. They offer grants as well as loans, and they house an organization called the Women's Business Center, which, as the name would imply, focuses on trying to help women be successful in business. We recently started working with them. Sierra College works with younger people, and so we've partnered with them in some of the work sharing environments. They're going to be the guest speaker at our chapter meeting next week. We work with a downtown organization which does an annual event called Calling All Dreamers. I think if you go to the next slide, that's, oh, sorry. Actually, if you go to the next slide for just a moment. Being a part of this Rotary organization, we are a very active organization, and there isn't a week that goes by that there isn't at least a couple of things going on here. SCORE has a very similar situation, and so I know that this print is way too small for you to read, but all of those blocks that you see in dates are an activity that SCORE is doing on that particular day. And so we have a very active schedule also, and we try our best to try and spread the load around. But that means that some of us wear multiple hats. So, you know, we have people who do newsletters, we have people who do marketing, we have people who teach classes, we have people who mentor.
And you do all those things, Steve.
And some of us do more than one of those things. If you move to the next slide, this is the slide that the Downtown Sacramento Foundation publishes in terms of their Calling All Dreamers program. This was a program they started, I think it was 7 years ago now, that they had a vacancy issue downtown. They were looking how were they going to fill their tenant spaces. And what they did is they put together a program very much like Shark Tank, if you're familiar with that, where they said, we're going to put up a prize package. The winner of this competition basically gets about $100,000 worth of goodies. Some of it is in terms of free marketing, some of it is in terms of free lease, reduced lease rates. Some of it is in terms of advice. And they partnered with SCORE in order to help qualify the various contestants. and do a final review. And this has been, I think, one of the most fun projects that we've done, because watching these contestants really put on their best performance. We were talking earlier about the speech contest. Imagine all of these young, mostly young people, coming together and basically working their butts off to try and win this $100,000 package, because it often means the difference between whether they will be successful or unsuccessful in the launch of their business. I think, Jim, we had a chance to participate in that. Sure? No, go ahead. All right, next slide. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I've been with SCORE for about 6 years now, and we continue to evolve as an organization. We try to get smarter about how we help people. I mentioned that SCORE National has a policy of basically promoting everyone to get into mentoring. We learned fairly early on that an awful lot of the people who were calling us, especially 6 years ago, were waking up unemployed. They were looking for a replacement for their income. They effectively were hoping that someone was going to give them money, and that money would turn into a business, and that business would turn into their job. And we were spending a lot of time, basically one-on-one, trying to educate them that there wasn't a pot of gold out there, that it was often a year, sometimes 2 years, before they actually saw a return on their investment. And so we created a curriculum where those people who call in and say, I have this great idea, but it's clear that they haven't done any of the due diligence necessary, we send them to what we call 101. And 101 is nothing more than a reality check. It tries to teach them, here's what the characteristics are of a successful entrepreneur. Here are some of the things that you'll have to do to start a business. Here are the success rates and the failure rates for most small businesses. These are some of the costs, some of the licensing or regulatory issues based on your business site that you will have to confront. About 20 to 30 people typically show up for each of these classes. About 4 to 5 of them typically move on to the next class. The next class teaches them how to do a one-page business plan. And it teaches them how to set goals. Because we found that in our mentoring, if they didn't know how to articulate what their needs were, we couldn't help them. And so we had to provide them with a structure in order to be able to show what were the key elements in a successful business plan. We had to remind them that what you're doing today is good, but you have to know where you're going to be 30 days from now, where you're going to be 90 days from now. And you have to track your progress. Because if you get off plan, it has implications in terms of cost. It has implications in terms of a lot of things. And a lot of people just didn't have that discipline for some of their other basics. And only then do we give these particular group of people mentors, which has dramatically increased our success rate in getting people through this program. Move to the next slide. The other side of this equation is we have a lot of business owners who have been in business for many years, and they are successful in their business. But they all share a few characteristics. After a few years in business, the idea that got them there is often running out of steam. They need to find a way to reinvent their business. They need to find a way to discover new customers. They need to find a way to market more effectively. They need to upgrade their systems in order to compete with new competition.
Yeah, I was going to say.
This is actually a class that we ran here at the chamber. In fact, one of the participants that was here. And we did that class over a 4-week period, 3 or 4 week period of time. And that's a class that we try to do, and we're going to be doing more of those kinds of classes around the chambers, at various chambers. But basically, it's to tell people what to sit down and then share information. We're sitting here giving a slideshow, but the purpose of the classes is really to get the information from the people that we're working with and have them talk to us and share what's going on in their personal business and how we can help them and discuss that. And you can do that. It really works well because not just the moderator, but all the people who are in the room also help because they all share information with each other. Sorry about that.
It's also interesting what you learn in doing these. This particular series of classes was developed here in Sacramento, and it was so successful that SCORE National picked it up, and it's now a nationwide campaign. And it was interesting that while the workshops themselves, I think, are very useful, what to a class, to a person who's been through this program will tell us is that as a result of going through the classes together, we then create essentially a forum, a once-a-month opportunity for the business owners who have gone to the classes to meet and talk among themselves. Because anyone who's ever been in business for themselves suddenly realizes it can be a very lonely place, that you end up talking to yourself a lot. You end up bouncing ideas off the wall. And having someone else that you can speak to who's in kind of the same position that you are makes a huge difference. The little bubble up to the upper right is something we have just recently introduced. It's a program that the SBA actually runs, an example of our partnership with them. And they have contracted with an outfit out of Boston. And this is actually limited to 20 businesses that are all relatively large, relatively successful. And they call it their mini MBA. And it's by invitation only, and it's facilitated, and it has been run nationwide also. And so we now run that as, if you will, the graduate program for what we've done. So I think we're almost through the slides. Let's just flip quickly. Mentoring we've talked about. It's always free. It's always confidential. Every year we get to be recertified, that we remember what our code of conduct is, and we're going to behave ourselves. And as Jim pointed out, anyone can offer you advice. We work really hard to try to make sure the mentors stay current on what's going on. We are backed by an organization that does research and provides us with additional training. So we'd like to think that the advice we give is reasonably coherent, reasonably helpful. If we move on to the next slide. This really is kind of an opportunity for you to ask questions.
Thank you both so much, and it really, these are